Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The moment Mariah stepped off the plane in Nice, the warmth of the French Riviera wrapped around her like a promise she wasn't sure she deserved. The sea breeze tugging playfully at her hair as her heart raced with a cocktail of fear and anticipation. She clutched her bag a little tighter, scanning the small airport terminal for a familiar face, knowing Kane would be here any second. She hadn't seen him in weeks, and the thought of facing him with the secret she carried made her stomach twist into knots. Every step toward the exit felt like walking on a tightrope stretched between hope and devastation. And then she saw him, Kane, standing tall with that signature blend of calm authority and subtle vulnerability, eyes searching, as if sensing her presence before she even called his name. His expression shifted from relief to concern as their eyes met, the weight of unspoken words hovering like storm clouds. "Mariah," he said, voice low, a mixture of caution and longing, stepping forward to close the distance. Her lips parted, ready to speak, but the words froze, caught between fear and necessity. Finally she inhaled, the words spilling out, tremulous yet firm. "Kane, I need to tell you something. I'm pregnant." The world seemed to pause, the terminal noise fading into a hush, as Kane's eyes widened, disbelief washing over his features, then quickly giving way to an intense swirl of emotions, shock, joy, fear, and an undercurrent of protectiveness. He took a hesitant step closer, as though proximity could make the news any less surreal, then reached for her hands, gripping them tightly. "Pregnant? Mariah, are you serious?" he asked, voice breaking slightly, a raw edge betraying the storm of feelings he'd been suppressing. She nodded, biting her lip, eyes glistening. "I didn't plan for this, Kane, but I couldn't keep it from you any longer. You deserve to know. And I needed to see you first." He stared at her, his mind racing, heart hammering, memories of everything they'd been through flooding back, fights, reconciliations, moments of tenderness, heartbreak, and hope, and suddenly all those pieces converged in a single, overwhelming realization. His life was about to change forever. Kane's hands rose to cradle her face, thumbs brushing away the anxious tears threatening to spill, and he whispered almost to himself, "Mariah, I don't even know what to say." She laughed nervously, a sound that carried both relief and tension. "You don't have to say anything," she murmured. "Just promise me you'll be here. I can't do this alone." The intensity in his gaze deepened, a fire igniting in his eyes that Mariah knew only Kane could summon. The fierce, unwavering determination to protect, to fight, to love. "I'm here, Mariah. Always," he said, voice low but unyielding, and in that moment, the chaos of past betrayals, misunderstandings, and heartache seemed to fall away, leaving only this fragile, extraordinary connection. As they stood in the embrace of the warm Riviera sunlight, Kane's mind raced ahead to every possible scenario, the joy, the challenges, the scrutiny, the secrets, the possible dangers, but none of it mattered as much as the life growing inside Mariah, a living testament to their love and resilience. "We need to tell Lily and Victoria and Kyle," Mariah said hesitantly, the weight of family dynamics pressing on her already anxious heart. Kane exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips despite the storm of worry that clouded his thoughts. "We'll handle it together," he assured her, voice steady, firm, and filled with conviction. "Every single step of the way. Nobody's going to hurt you. Nobody's going to hurt our baby." And then the vulnerability in her gaze softened, replaced by a flicker of hope as she reached up to rest her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, grounding her in the whirlwind of emotions. As they walked out of the airport, the cityscape of Nice stretching before them in golden light, Kane stole a glance at Mariah, noting the mixture of fear and anticipation on her face. He knew that the road ahead would be complicated, past rivals, hidden agendas, and unspoken truths lurking around every corner. But in that moment, he made a silent vow to protect the fragile new life they had created together. The salty breeze carried a hint of reassurance, mingling with the intoxicating scent of possibility, as Kane squeezed her hand, murmuring, "We'll figure this out together." A promise that seemed to echo through the sunlit streets, carrying with it both hope and the thrilling uncertainty that had always defined their lives. And though they both knew that the days ahead would test their limits, challenge their trust, and perhaps even push them to the edge of heartbreak, for the first time in a long time, They felt the intoxicating pull of something pure, a reminder that amidst the chaos of Genoa City's ever-turning drama, love, raw, unguarded, and unstoppable, could still bloom in the most unexpected places. As Mariah and Kane exited the airport, the Mediterranean sun glinting off the shimmering water, the soft murmur of tourists and locals in the background seemed to fade under the weight of the emotions crackling between them. Kane's mind raced, grappling with the revelation that Mariah carried his child, while also trying to anticipate the fallout from the people who mattered most in their lives. He barely had time to register the gentle tug of Mariah's hand when a familiar voice called out, sharp and incredulous, cutting through the tension like a knife. Mariah? Kane? What on earth are you doing here? Lily entered the scene, her designer bag swinging from her arm, her eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Mariah turned, cheeks flushed, and swallowed hard. Lily? I didn't expect you. Her voice trailed off, the words heavy with the secret she still carried in full. Kane stepped protectively in front of her, sensing the incoming storm. We had to come, he said firmly, keeping his tone calm but authoritative. There's something you need to know. Lily's gaze flicked between them, sensing the tension, her eyebrows knitting together. Something to know? Kane, you're scaring me. What is it? Mariah inhaled, her hands trembling slightly as she glanced at Kane, drawing courage from his steady presence. I'm pregnant, she blurted out, the words carrying over the soft breeze, startling both Lily and a nearby cafe patron who had paused mid-step. Kane watched Lily's reaction carefully, shock, followed by a rapid swirl of emotions. Lily's eyes softened as she moved closer, but then narrowed with the sharpness that only a Newman Coppola family member could muster. Pregnant? She echoed, voice incredulous, almost as if she were testing the reality of the moment. Mariah, that's wow. Her mind raced, Mariah's history, Kane's complicated love life, the timing, the stakes. Wow. Mariah repeated, a hint of frustration breaking through her anxiety. Yes, wow. Kane, Mariah, this is huge. Are you okay? Kane nodded, but his jaw was tight. We're fine. But the timing? It's complicated and we need to figure out how to tell everyone back home. Just then, the sound of approaching footsteps made Mariah and Kane glance toward the street, where a familiar figure emerged, taller than Lily, with an intensity in his stride that could only belong to Kyle Abbott. His face shifted from casual surprise to sharp concern the moment he saw Mariah standing close to Kane. Mariah? Kane? What's happening? Why didn't anyone tell me you were here? Kyle's voice carried that mix of frustration and urgency, a hallmark of his protective instincts, and his sometimes overwhelming need to be in control. Kane stepped slightly forward, shielding Mariah, but gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Kyle, it's not what it looks like. Mariah cut him off, taking a deep breath and summoning the courage she had been building for days. Kyle, I'm pregnant. With Kane's baby. The words landed like thunderclaps, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to freeze. Kyle's eyes widened, disbelief etched across his sharp features, followed by a flicker of concern that immediately gave way to the careful, measured gaze of a man thinking about consequences, responsibility, and family. Pregnant? With Kane's child? He repeated slowly, as though saying it aloud might make the reality sink in. Mariah nodded, her hands clasped together, a mixture of fear and anticipation in her eyes. I didn't plan for this, but I couldn't hide it anymore. You deserve to know. And I needed Kane to hear it first. Kyle's brow furrowed, shifting his gaze to Kane, then back to Mariah, a storm of conflicting emotions passing over him. Okay. This is a lot. But are you okay, Mariah? How are you feeling? I mean, his words stumbled as he grappled with concern, protective instincts, and the realization that their lives were about to become exponentially more complicated. Lily placed a reassuring hand on Mariah's shoulder, her earlier incredulity softening into maternal warmth. Mariah, listen, we're here. You're not alone. Kane's right, this is huge, and yes, it's complicated, but you have people who love you. We'll get through this. Before Mariah could respond, another familiar voice rang out. Victoria Newman, her arrival sudden yet commanding, her presence immediately shifting the dynamics of the scene. I heard there's a bombshell in Nice, Victoria said, her eyes narrowing slightly, scanning each face for answers, Her tone equal parts curiosity, concern, and the ever-present edge of authority she wielded like a finely tuned weapon. Mariah's stomach tightened, but Kane placed a gentle hand on her back, grounding her. "Victoria, it's true. I'm pregnant." Victoria blinked, her usual composure flickering for the briefest of moments before she masked it with a controlled exhale. "Pregnant? Kane's child." "Mariah, wow," she said slowly, absorbing the news, her mind already racing ahead to the inevitable complications, the media, the family fallout, and the delicate dance of alliances and expectations that always seemed to follow them. Mariah felt the weight of every gaze. Lily's worry, Kyle's astonishment, Victoria's guarded curiosity. But Kane's hand on hers reminded her she wasn't facing it alone. "We're happy, scared, overwhelmed, but we wanted you to know before anyone else," Mariah admitted, her voice wavering but firm. Kyle took a step closer, the analytical part of his mind working overtime. "Happy, yes, but there's a lot at stake here, Mariah. Kane, we need to make sure she's protected. And we'll have to tell the rest of Genoa City eventually. This changes everything." Kane nodded, feeling the truth of Kyle's words, but also aware that right now, the priority was Mariah's well-being, their connection, and the fragile new life growing inside her. Victoria crossed her arms, leaning against the airport railing, letting the reality of the news sink in. "Genoa City is going to explode when they hear this. But you're both strong enough to handle it. Just remember, there are people who will try to manipulate this, twist it, and use it for their own agendas. You can't let anyone interfere with your life or your baby." Mariah shivered, partly from the cool sea breeze and partly from the intensity of the moment, but she drew courage from Kane's unwavering gaze. "We know," she said softly. "We'll handle it together." And then, as if on cue, the sound of another car pulling up caught their attention, bringing with it the unmistakable presence of Amanda Sinclair, Kane's longtime friend and fiercely loyal confidant, who immediately scanned the group with her usual directness. "I heard there was a drama unfolding in Nice," she said, eyes flicking first to Mariah, then Kane, then the rest of the assembled friends and family. Her tone, equal parts teasing and serious, broke some of the tension, and even Mariah managed a small, relieved smile. Amanda's presence reminded them that no matter how volatile or unpredictable life in Genoa City could get, there were people who would stand by them, fight with them, and protect them in ways only true loyalty could guarantee. As the group gathered, the sun beginning its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and coral, Mariah felt a strange mix of fear, relief, and hope. She looked at Kane, his profile silhouetted against the sparkling sea, and she realized that, despite the chaos, despite the secrets, despite the inevitable challenges ahead, there was a new beginning forming here. A life that represented love, resilience, and the unshakable bonds of family. Kane bent down slightly, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple, murmuring, "No matter what comes, Mariah will protect this. Will protect us. I promise." And in that moment, the entire group, from Lily to Kyle to Victoria to Amanda, could sense the gravity of what was unfolding. A story that would reverberate across continents, shake the foundations of Genoa City, and redefine relationships, loyalties, and hearts. The air was thick with anticipation, unspoken questions, and the charged energy that only the young and the restless could conjure. And as Mariah drew a shaky breath, she realized that, for the first time in a long while, the uncertainty of life felt like a challenge she was ready to face, surrounded by the people she loved, with Kane by her side, and a future unfolding that was as terrifying as it was beautiful. And even as the city lights of Nice began to twinkle against the twilight sky, casting golden reflections on the cobblestone streets and the glistening water, Mariah felt the subtle shift of destiny, the quiet hum of possibility, and the undeniable truth that life, love, and family were about to collide in ways no one, including Kane, Kyle, Victoria, or Lily, could have ever imagined. Every heartbeat, every glance, every whispered word was now charged with the knowledge that this was only the beginning of a story that would ripple through hearts, challenge every assumption, and demand courage in ways none of them had yet experienced. And so, in the soft glow of the Riviera evening, with the gentle hum of the city and the sea around them, the group stood together, bound by secrets, love, and an inevitable chain of events that promised heartbreak, joy, betrayal, and hope in equal measure, knowing that in the world of Genoa City, nothing stayed quiet for long and nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. As the soft Riviera twilight deepened, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. Mariah felt Kane's hand tighten around hers, grounding her even as the realization of what had just happened, the revelation, the reactions, the sudden gathering of her closest allies and family, settled heavily on her chest. She could feel the weight of every gaze, Lily's motherly concern still mixed with a trace of astonishment, Kyle's analytical, protective tension barely restrained behind a mask of polite composure, Victoria's icy, calculating glance that nonetheless carried the faintest hint of surprise, and Amanda's keen, watchful attention, already assessing the landscape of potential risks and threats as only she could. Even in this moment of personal triumph and terror, Mariah couldn't help but replay the past few weeks in her mind, the dizzying carousel of emotions, the sleepless nights pacing her apartment, the constant gnawing anxiety that perhaps Kane wouldn't respond the way she hoped, that he might recoil, that everything she had imagined as a future together could shatter with one wrong word or one misstep. She glanced up at Kane, his profile softened by the fading sunlight, and a surge of relief washed over her. He hadn't pulled away, hadn't wavered, and that steadfast presence reminded her why she had loved him for so long, despite the betrayals, misunderstandings, and heartbreaks that had punctuated their lives. He gave her a small, reassuring squeeze, and she knew in that moment that no matter what else happened, this connection, this promise, this shared life growing within her, was unbreakable. Yet even as hope warmed her heart, the practical reality loomed. They weren't in Genoa City. They were in Nice, miles away from their usual allies, their familiar routines, and their safety net. Every glance exchanged among the small group standing around them carried a subtle undercurrent of strategy, the unspoken acknowledgement that Genoa City was never just about family. It was a battlefield of influence, control, and secrets. Mariah's thoughts flickered briefly to Victor, whose shadow always seemed to stretch across every corner of their lives, and she felt a shiver run through her spine, wondering how he would react when news of the pregnancy inevitably reached him. Would he try to manipulate the situation? Would he attempt to control the narrative before they had a chance to decide for themselves? And what about Nick? Even absent in this moment, his presence seemed to hover in the back of her mind, a reminder that the Newman name came with complications that could erupt at any moment. "Kane, what do we do now?" she asked softly, her voice barely above the hum of the city around them, the question carrying a mixture of fear, hope, and the vulnerable truth that she didn't have all the answers. Kane inhaled slowly, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple before lowering his voice, steady and calm despite the tumult within. "First we breathe," he murmured. "Then we figure out the immediate logistics, our safety, the baby's health, and how we tell the rest of Genoa City in a way that doesn't blow everything up before we're ready." Kyle, standing slightly behind Lily, interjected, his voice laced with a combination of urgency and concern. "Kane, this isn't just about logistics. This is about family, about the repercussions, about how every single person connected to you two is going to react. We need to plan this carefully. One wrong move, one careless word, and things could spiral out of control faster than you can imagine." Lily stepped closer to Mariah, placing a steadying hand on her back. "Kyle's right," she said, her tone softer now, laced with reassurance. "But you also need to remember that you're not alone in this. Kane's here and we're all here. We'll protect you and we'll protect this baby no matter what." Mariah's lips trembled as she took in Lily's words, the warmth of support clashing with the fear that had been growing inside her for weeks. She wanted to believe them, wanted to trust that this unusual, high-stakes environment could still feel safe, if only for a moment. Amanda, ever the observer, tilted her head slightly, her expression serious. "We're not naive," she said. "Nice may feel far removed, but the world doesn't stop for Genoa City drama. We have to assume that anyone who wants to interfere will find a way. We have to be proactive, not reactive. That means contingency plans, clear communication, and absolute vigilance." Kane nodded, absorbing every word. "Agreed," he said firmly. "We'll do whatever it takes to protect Mariah and this baby. Nothing else matters." Mariah felt the tension ease slightly at his declaration, though a flicker of anxiety remained. She glanced toward Kyle and Victoria, noting the calculated glances, the subtle weighing of risks and alliances. Victoria stepped forward, her composure perfect, but the intensity in her eyes was unmistakable. "We'll need to coordinate with the families, manage potential media exposure, and anticipate any interference." "Kane, Mariah, You're not just carrying a baby. You're carrying a story that will shake Genoa City to its core. Mariah swallowed hard, the weight of Victoria's words pressing down on her. I know it's huge, but we're ready to face it together. Victoria's eyes softened minutely, acknowledging the courage in her words, even as her mind began calculating every angle, every potential threat, every variable that could impact the unfolding drama. As the group moved away from the airport terminal, the streets of Nice stretching before them like a sun-drenched stage set, Mariah felt her heart race, a mixture of excitement and dread. She could already envision the moment they returned to Genoa City, the shockwaves of her revelation rippling outward, the confrontations, the alliances, the betrayals, the moments of tenderness and heartbreak yet to come. She thought of Cain, his unwavering support, his fierce protective instinct, and a surge of gratitude and love filled her chest. I can't believe this is happening, she whispered almost to herself. Cain tightened his grip on her hand, leaning close so only she could hear. It's real, he said softly, and we'll make sure it's everything it should be, beautiful, safe, and ours. Meanwhile, Kyle's mind was already racing ahead, strategizing, weighing every possible outcome, anticipating reactions from the Newmans, the Abbotts, and the extended web of friends and enemies whose lives intersected with theirs in ways both overt and hidden. This isn't just about you two, he muttered, mostly to himself though everyone heard. It's about power, influence, and control. Whoever hears about this first, whoever tries to spin it, could change everything. We have to be careful. Lily placed a hand on his arm, grounding him, even as she shared Mariah's concern. Kyle will manage it. Together. We always do. And then, as if orchestrated by fate, a small cafe on the corner caught their attention, and Mariah instinctively led the group toward it, seeking a semblance of normalcy amidst the whirlwind of emotions. The aroma of freshly baked bread and strong coffee offered a temporary reprieve, a soft cocoon where they could regroup, plan, and breathe. As they seated themselves at a table overlooking the glittering water, Amanda leaned in, her voice low and urgent. We need to map this out. Potential threats, allies, and how we handle the first ripple of gossip back in Genoa City. We can't let this spiral before we have control. Cain nodded, appreciating her foresight, but Mariah felt a small panic rising again. I want to enjoy this moment, she murmured, looking at Cain. I want to feel this happiness without everything else crashing down. Cain reached across the table, taking both of her hands in his. We will, he said firmly, his gaze locking with hers. But we also need to be smart. Happy, safe, and smart. That's our mantra from now on. The group fell into a focused discussion, strategizing, planning contingencies, and anticipating every possible reaction from the people they loved and feared. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of crimson and gold, Mariah leaned back in her chair, watching the water sparkle, listening to the soft hum of the city, and allowed herself a small, fragile smile. Despite the uncertainty, the tension, and the looming challenges, she felt a flicker of hope, a quiet, steady flame that promised that no matter how chaotic life in Genoa City could be, they were not alone, and together, they could face anything. Cain squeezed her hands once more, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat, a grounding force amidst the storm. They weren't naive. They knew the road ahead would be treacherous. But in that moment, surrounded by allies, friends, and family who would fight for them as fiercely as they would for themselves, Mariah allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a new beginning. A life defined not by past betrayals or secrets, but by love, resilience, and the promise of a future, one heartbeat at a time. And as the Riviera night settled around them, the lights reflecting in the water like stars fallen to earth, they silently vowed that no matter the chaos, no matter the scheming eyes and waiting gossip, they would protect what mattered most. Each other and the life that was already transforming their world forever. Every glance, every breath, every whispered word carried the weight of destiny, the promise of a story that would ripple through Genoa City with seismic impact, touching hearts, testing loyalties, and igniting passions in ways no one could yet imagine. And as the night deepened, Mariah felt Cain's steady presence beside her, the soft murmur of waves lapping against the shore, and a strange, exhilarating certainty that their story, their love, and the life growing within her were unstoppable, unbreakable, and just beginning.